If you look at the world now, you're seeing everyone in power is a lawless creature. It's so extraordinary because that's the thrill of being powerful, is being lawless. And eventually it goes into a madness because there's no part of your soul that's cooperating with it. At some point, hopefully people will, one by one, realize, I think that the role of life is not to take as much as I can and control everyone, but to use my gifts to transform the world I live in. That's the shift. The author, I think that's John, he was referring to this universe is conscious, and all it has to do is say a word, form a thought. And that's what human beings can't grasp, is that that's the same substance of which we are made. I think that's one of the greatest messages of Jesus. You're made of this stuff, and it's powerful. Let me show you how it works. You want it to heal. You want to help someone. But you have to be the channel. You have to get over your craving for power and get into the power you have. That is love, because that is the nature of all of this. Everything is a partnership with the universe. And it's your choice to wake up and decide, what am I going to do with this day God gave me?
Okay, Caroline, welcome to the show. To get started, I heard you say something really interesting that I'd like just to kick off with. And this is essentially that the purpose of life is to make the journey from the love of power to the power of love. Can you just expand on your thinking here?
Oh, easily on that. I think human beings, when we all start out our life and look at the early days, even in childhood, we're taught what has power and what doesn't, and there's a mechanism in us, our survival instinct, that has to kind of figure out, what kind of power do I want to acquire to keep me safe? Do I need stuff? And so we all go through the stuff era. We need stuff. What kind of stuff? Well, maybe stuff that drives well, and maybe stuff in a neighborhood that's thought of as powerful. So we go through the stuff phase. But it is inevitable that we can only stuff ourselves so much. And what happens then is that we start drifting into, it's kind of like the progression from job to career to calling. At the job stage, we don't have any power. We just have to survive. But then we think, I want the power to decide when I get up and when I sit down. I want the power to decide when I get a cup of coffee. So we move to the career stage within us. We start discovering inner urgings. And this is where self-esteem and the sense of self, and that's where we start asking, what's the purpose of my life here? I mean, what am I actually doing? We start asking bigger questions. And those questions aren't satisfied by getting more stuff. It just won't work. So at some point, we face this bridge, which not a lot of people actually cross over, Neil. It's the bridge of what can I do with my power to empower others? Maybe that's why I'm here. Maybe that's the purpose of my life. Most people fear empowering others. They don't mind giving them a blanket if it's cold, but they won't give them more money so they can afford a house. They won't give them a raise because there's a mechanism in people that fears that if you have more power than me, I'm at a loss. We don't get that a rising tide lifts all ships. We just have never gotten that mystical equation. We don't get it. So what happens is people they think, maybe more stuff will satisfy me. That's it. I'll get more stuff. And what happens there is really fascinating because there's a mechanism in us that simply won't cooperate with that. And so we start absorbing all this power, all this influence, money, all this stuff. And what happens is eventually a kind of power madness starts in a person where it's not about accumulating wealth, it's accumulating power. And then they start being afraid of who's going to take that power. And people in this place measure their degree of power by stepping outside the law. That's their measure. Where laws are for ordinary mortals to keep them in line. But I've reached a point where I don't have to wait in line and I just order up this and I do this. Laws don't apply to me. If you look at the world now, you're seeing everyone in power is a lawless creature. It's so extraordinary because that's the thrill of being powerful, is being lawless. Nothing applies to them. And eventually it goes into a madness because there's no part of your soul that's cooperating with it. At some point, hopefully people will, one by one, realize, I think that the role of life is not to take as much as I can and control everyone, but to use my gifts to transform the world I live in. That's the shift. That's the shift. Teresa of Avila, really, I absolutely adore her. And one of her teachings is, there's two kinds of wells. There's the well you drink, you dig yourself for water, and you'll find water and it'll sustain you, but it'll run out. And then you have to go and dig another one. And you'll find that water, but eventually it'll run dry. She said, the only well that matters is the one heaven opens for you. And that's when you are driven by a love of power, you end up stealing other people's wells, cheating to get their water, doing whatever you can, until you finally recognize this is a very short journey, this life we're on. And I am much better off doing what I can to make the world a better place than trying to hoard everything I can, thinking, like so many of these lunatics think, that I can now figure out a way to extend my physical life or get off the planet if it goes into a nuclear holocaust, because I have so much stuff.
Wow, what a way to start. You mentioned that these people, Caroline, they have no regard for laws. They're lawless. And I've heard you speak about the nature of God being law, light, and love. And I would love to just get your perspective here as well, because this is maybe the biggest thing we could be speaking about, the nature of God itself.
Yes. I mean, I am convinced that we're in an extraordinary turning point in which our understanding of our mythic cosmos is shifting. Till now, we've really been driven by a belief in an off-planet God, whether it's Muhammad or whether it's Jesus or whether it's the Messiah. But we have this idea of an off-planet God. The East has, Buddha and Taoism, and et cetera. But we have this idea that there's like this off-planet God that looks like us, behaves like us, except a little nicer, and requires enough candles lit that look like the burning of Rome in order to get a prayer answered. I mean, we've anthropomorphized. That's not working anymore. It's not working because its usefulness has come to an end. We have to now, I want you to follow the way heaven works, which just blows me away. All of us have been downloaded with this idea that in order for me to be healthy, let's just treat yourself as if you're a micro earth. That in order for you to be healthy, all your cells have to cooperate. Are we in agreement there? And all your organs. Imagine that each organ actually represented a sovereign nation. That in order imagine if you're kidney said, oh, no, I'm controlling the shots here. I want to dominate. You just do everything for me. And your body would go to, right? I mean, it just would die. So we are really getting this notion that to be integrated and whole is the only way we are really going to thrive. Now, that is not just for your physical body. That's for your spiritual body. That's for your consciousness. Whole is the new template that the universe has downloaded. And it's really fascinating to me. I mean, I'm writing a book actually about my own experience with guidance and why I teach what I do. And I really remembered that I found it so fascinating that the idea of holism more or less exploded within us. At the same time, this thought came that, you know what, I think we create our own reality. I mean, where did that come from? But it came and it arrived like a cosmic download. And it reshaped our and out of that came this idea of the inner self. I think I have an inner self. And that inner self talks more authentically to me. Really? Yeah. Like how many people will say, but I got it on the inner, but my feeling, like what was really being born was a level of self-esteem that previously self-esteem was associated with self-respect and being able to manage the boundaries of your physical life, but not your conscious life, not your sense of dignity, not your sense of choice, the power you have in choice. That was never associated with respect in that way. Now it's like the power to co-create, the power to follow instruction that comes from the inside instead of the outside. All of these wires started to get put in place in the 60s, and we've been evolving with two cosmic teachings that are directing us ultimately to become one planetary community, Neil. Now, you and I won't live to see that, but what we are living to see is that, like the wiring of what you call the internet is actually a reflection of our internet and how we are totally wired to each other. And we've just created the technology that reflects the way the collective unconscious has been working all the time. But we have not been able to actually grasp that. And within that, we need a new understanding of the nature of God that operates on the dynamic laws of co-creation. Everything is law. Everything. Your body operates on laws. The heart, the mathematics of your heartbeat, the mathematics of blinking your eye. If we didn't have laws, we couldn't treat illness or we couldn't do anything. Everything operates on laws, cause and effect. Eat this and look what happens. Every single thing. That's the nature of God. And the reason, and we have entered a bio-spiritual a bio-spiritual ecological theology in which this power of choice that we've been refining for 70 years, we're finally going to realize that actually every choice we make sets energy in motion. Everything. Whether the choice comes out of my mouth or I keep it between my ears, it's going to have a consequence. And that consequence gets plugged into the collective. And I would be better off plugging in grace than plugging in resentment, because the law of magnetic attraction will bring back to me what I've gone shopping for. So if I send out a bunch, if you will excuse me for 1 minute. If I go out, if I realize I have the most extraordinary power, my background's in mystical theology. I've got a lot of, And from the time I was little, I was fascinated with saints. Absolutely. I thought, what the heck did they experience that made them live so extreme? They're not insane. So what do they know that I don't know? When I was in college, I took a religion class. I went to a all women's Catholic college that was a convent. That had a convent where you could enter. And on this day, this magnificent professor who totally molded me from the get-go, from the moment I met her, she said in this class on Eastern religions, on Buddhism, she began the class and she said, I'm going to teach you to meditate today. So we all took out our pencils, ready to take notes. And she went. And she went away for the whole class. For the whole class, right? And I thought, where did you go? Where did you go? And that was it. I became a devotee of this nun, I can tell you that. But she taught me, she introduced to me how important it was to understand that this universe was totally impersonal and deeply intimate. And if you could live in that paradox, your whole life changes. Whole life changes. And you get that but what happens to us is not personal, but how we respond is intimate. And it matters. It matters. And we set into motion consequences that the universe will let happen because that's what you've chosen to experience. And they step in if you pray. So, to me, all existence is light. And that is the nature of God. So the divine's everything. It's in my desk, it's in my clothing, it's in my dog, it's in you, it's in me. This is all God's substance. How I decide to live within that is my choice. But if I decide I'm breathing not just air, I'm breathing grace and I'm breathing divine grace, I feel like I resonate at a different level with life. And the way I see people, honest to God, one of my practices, am I rambling too much?
No, this is great. Keep going.
One of my practices is that I walk down the street and I make it a point to smile at everybody or to say good morning or afternoon or whatever. Because it is so extraordinary how people walk down the street with this fear on their face. This fear of other people, this fear of what are they afraid of? And all you have to do is say hi and bingo. They smile. The heart comes out. It's effortless. It's effortless. All they have to do is be acknowledged. I mean, do you realize how many people walk around full of fear? Fear of the outside world, fear of other human beings, fear of strangers, fear. One of the practices is get out of that. Break your way through. So anyway, that's part of the practice of the power of love. And what I tell my students is you have no idea how you change an atmosphere. If you've ever been in a room and someone comes in and they're all piss and vinegar, as my father used to say, they don't even have to say anything. They just radiate discomfort. And everybody knows it. And if you came in and you thought, I'm going to just shine my light, I'm just going to ask for grace to pour through me. That's it. I'm just pouring light through me into this room. That same change happens and no one gets why they feel better or they feel more relaxed or the tension leaves. Grace is a very subtle force. It's a mystical force. Angels don't bust in your room and say hi. They'll never do that. They're creatures, they're beings that go in disguise as ordinary events.
For sure. So what do you think is the relationship between the physical world, Caroline, and the symbolic world?
The symbolic world or word?
World.
World. Okay. Where are you from?
Derry in Northern Ireland.
Oh, you're Derry. You're from Derry.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Why I cannot believe that you just asked me that. Let me show you something. These are the notes on the book I'm writing right now. Thing weighs a ton. These are the notes I made this morning, and it's on that question. Because I need to write about trying to communicate what the power is of the symbolic realm versus the physical. And we are compelled to seek meaning in everything. What's the meaning of this? How come my car got stolen? What's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of that? I mean, we can't go through a day without looking for some hidden message somewhere. We can't. What's the meaning? I wonder why they didn't call. What's the meaning of that? We just can't. We've got to fill in that blank. And we, left to our own devices, we take conversations and look for symbolic meaning in it. What they really mean by that? What do we just can't stop ourselves, because what the symbolic dimension is our capacity to use our higher senses to gather data that's not yet fluid. So I want you to think of it like if we were outside and we were studying meteorology. And I said, okay, look at all the mist out there. You can't see it, but you know it's there. And the mist is gathering. And that's the symbolic realm. You know it's there. You know it's full of potential. But you don't read mist yet. But you watch the mist as it densifies, it becomes rain, and it eventually comes down and it hits us. And now it turns to ice because it's so bloody cold here in Chicago. So it turns to ice. And once it's solid, you actually think you have something. But what you have is the end of the line because it started there. And as soon as you give it a little time, this is going to go back to that. It'll return to mist. And what the symbolic realm is where you engage your power of choice. You organize the mist to come into form. And as you make decisions from the symbolic fluid, like what's the meaning and purpose of this? The symbolic language will speak to you. So as an example, what makes sacred literature sacred? What makes, here, I always have a Bible near me. I always have the scripture near me. So I have this. What makes a sentence in here, any sentence? For when we were in the flesh, the wounds of sin, which were by the law, worked in our members to bring forth fruits to death. This is Romans. But now we are freed from the law, being dead to which that has had hold on us. This is Paul. Now you could read that literally and think, that doesn't make a damn bit of sense to me. What the hell is he talking about? But everything in the scripture, whether it's this or the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, I can pull the Quran from behind me. I've got them all. Every one of them. When you develop a part of yourself that decides, you know what I think? I think my inner senses are more precise, more perceptive than what I see. What I see is a book. But my perception says, no, it's a channel for truth. If I approach holy literature or even a conversation with this idea that hidden in it could be a channel for truth, I've shifted gears. Another way for me to say this is If you picture a 12-story building, the first floor is the one that everyone likes. It's got all the stuff and it's stuff and more stuff. But the only view you have is out the window and across the street. Now, if I take you up to the 12th, 11th floor and I say, what do you see from up here? And you look out your window and all of a sudden you see this vastness that you can't see on the first floor. You haven't changed your address. You haven't changed anything about where you are. The only thing is you've gone to a much higher perspective of exactly where you've been all along. And from up there, you see life serving ingredients that you can't access on the first floor. There's more light. There's less chaos. There's better air, the rare air. There's silence, the monastic, beautiful silence. And from up there, I'd say to you, now what's on your mind? Now what's on your mind? When you're out from the controlling chaos of the first floor, when you're up there in yourself, then meaning comes to you. Then you're able to receive instead of look. People don't get it. We're not designed to, meaning is not something you find in a box. It's something that your wiring finally can receive.
Beautiful, beautiful. What do you make of the sentence from the Bible that in the beginning was the Word? Is this just this is the idea sort of crystallized, would you say?
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was flesh, and et cetera, et cetera. I think that, the scripture writers were tasked with describing messages from the teachings from Jesus and messages from the other side that they themselves were overwhelmed by. Their own consciousness was blown away. The language wasn't created to describe that world in this world. So when they say what the beginning was the Word, a thought. In the beginning was consciousness. But they weren't referring to us. They were the author. I think that's John. He was referring to this universe is conscious, and all it has to do is say a word, form a thought, and that's what human beings can't grasp. Is that that's the same substance of which we are made. I think that's one of the greatest messages of Jesus. You're made of this stuff. And it's powerful. Let me show you how it works. You want it to heal. You want to help someone. You want this, but you have to be the channel. You have to get over your craving for power and get into the power you have. That is love, because that is the nature of all of this.
Beautiful, beautiful. It just makes me think, we're here to co-create. What kind of difference has understanding the language of the archetypes had or made in your life, Caroline?
Carol, I'm telling you, I'm writing my chapter on archetypes. I can't believe the questions you have. Were you in my office? What I would say is it makes all the difference in the world. All the difference in the world, because archetypes are like codes of a cosmic language. And in order to really get into the fluidity of the pattern, you have to meet that archetype halfway. They're not literal creatures. They're not angels, but they're real. And they're cosmic carriers of patterns that make up the human experience. And in order to really access the power of what understanding, and just take a look at the archetype of the addict and how many people have dealt with their addiction because of AA, which is Alcoholics Anonymous. What Bill Wilson and Bill Smith did was they were able to identify a perfect profile of how an archetypal pattern works, and that this is everybody. And in that, they were able to allow a person to become impersonal about something that's deeply intimate, their addiction. And that's true no matter what archetypal pattern you look at. if you realize, it's so funny. I never wanted to be a teacher, Neil. Never. And I'm brilliant at it. I'm absolutely brilliant at it. I mean, I walk into a classroom and no, it's true. I'm brilliant at it. What I wanted to be brilliant at was something I have no talent for, which is fiction writing. But even as a child, when I would go up to my bedroom and I had my little stuffed toys, I'd line them up on my bed and I would lecture them. I mean, it was in me from the get-go. And that's my fascination with our patterns, is that if you could figure out and understand what your patterns are, know thyself. What Teresa of Avila said was self-knowledge is the journey to the soul. Know yourself. And no, I've got to teach. Now, I balked at that as a young person because I don't like being around kids. I mean, I could never be a, grade school teacher, third, fourth grade, like my aunts were. And I thought, oh, God, save me from that. They were always sticky and crying. But then I met Barbara Doherty, my nun mentor. And she said, I am bound by my vow to pass on knowledge. Whether or not you like me is of no significance. I am bound to God to pass on the truths I've learned. I thought, that's it. There you go. That's it. And then there's something in your archetypal pattern that when you hear something like that, you go like this and you think, bloody hell, she's talking about me. And what's fascinating to me is if you can be attracted to an archetypal pattern, but you don't have it. You just don't have it. And so, like, I met so many people through my workshops who've wanted to be entrepreneurs. They want to be an actor. They want to be this, but they don't have the pattern. And that's like Teresa saying, go ahead and dig your own well. Go ahead. I'll let you do that. Move to Hollywood, do this or that. But there'll be nothing provided on our side because you're not meant to do that. You got to know your patterns.
And you mentioned there about how, there's an archetypal pattern for addiction, for example, which makes me think that the alcoholic, these things aren't totally, benevolent. There are some that are life-giving and some life-destroying. So, it begs the question of, what is the right relationship to have with archetypes? Do archetypes have us, or do we have archetypes?
You are doing what my students always do, which is they seem to be some bad archetypes and that. No, all archetypal patterns are completely neutral. They don't have a dog in the game. They're just patterns of power. So the learning on our part is, what am I going to do with the power that is my life? And what the addict is all about, and everybody has the addict in some measure. That's one of those universal archetypes is that the addict brings out in us our how we will negotiate our power for stuff in the world. And what then has control over us? Could be gambling, could be food, it could be booze, it could be drugs, it could be fame, whatever. But what the experience of addiction is about is the tug of war between the physical matter world and your inner power. Completely neutral, my darling, until you win. And then you feel like $1,000,000, and that's the purpose.
So in some ways they're there to bring light to this tension and raise awareness of of these things to help us?
You're personalizing it too much. Archetypes are impersonal. Picture latitude and longitude around the globe. Can you do that? The lines that go like this? Wherever they cross, I want you to imagine there's an archetype. There's the judge and the rescuer, the prostitute, the pirate. They're all, and they're sparkling like this. And they don't have a dog in the game here. Their journey, their role is to manage the evolution of human consciousness. That's what they are. So they're always absorbing our myths. They're guardians of the order of consciousness, because power needs structure. Energy needs structure for creation. Part of the laws. And when we are born, we come in with think of eau de toilette, cologne, and perfume. There's some archetypes which we have a perfume relationship with. They're going to be with us all our life. There are other archetypes that kind of come and go, but the ones that are with us all our life have a governing influence on our nature. It's in what's in your nature. For example, you like a lot of quiet time. You like to be alone to get your ideas together. You like your quiet time. You like that, but you love nature. And there's a very strong nature child in you. And there's a very strong, like, philosopher kind of person in you. That the world of ideas is far more seductive to you than the world of stuff. Those are archetypal patterns in you. You're a very strong humanitarian. And so these are formative. They influence the books you read, the ideas you have, the choices you make. They don't control it, but they make available the entire archive of what is the humanitarian. It's up to you to decide, I think I'll go into my inner humanitarian library and realize I need to expand the books on my inner shelf. I need some knowledge here. Everything is a partnership with the universe.
Interesting. Okay. So don't personalize archetypes.
And don't think about something. When you're my brother was an alcoholic, and he died from it. And the greatest asset I had in helping my family heal and go through the nightmare of what it is to watch someone lose their life to booze was to become impersonal, not uncaring. I adored him. But by introducing an archetypal pattern, what it took out of everybody's grief was the idea that they had done something, that they could have done something more. And in explaining the pattern, that the pattern was stronger than he was. It wasn't personal. Now, that gift, that capacity to look at everyone archetypally, look at their archetypes, pick them out. I do it all the time. And everybody does it. People sit around and they call it labels. Oh, look, that person looks like a geek. That person looks like... They're always reading each other's archetypes. They just don't get it. And the word is very uncomfortable for people, but everybody's always labeling or this or that. They'll describe someone, he's a good guy. And that communicates to another person, okay, I know the pattern. And when you know someone's patterns and how unconscious they are of them, the pattern will call the shots. Let me say this again. The role of consciousness is to become conscious of patterns. Oh, I'm an addict. Okay, it's not your fault I'm unhappy. It's not your fault I'm stealing money. That's what addicts do. So now I have to challenge that addict. And it begins by not blaming everybody for how you beat that pattern and get to the other side so it empowers you. When you're with somebody and you spot a pattern, What I also teach my students is to take a look at how conscious they are of that, because if a person's not conscious of their wounded child, they will behave as a wounded child and you won't be able to get through to them. And when you say, I just can't reason with that person, they start throwing things and they cry and this and that. No. What you're looking at is a wounded child having a temper tantrum. It's not personal. They would do that every time they're unhappy. So don't take it personally. Become very impersonal. Am I helping you here?
Yeah, you are. Well, it's almost like you're almost like looking at like the weather. It's impersonal. Some days it's rainy, some days it's sunny. This person is.
No, that's exactly it. And it's your choice to wake up and decide, what am I going to do with this day God gave me? I think I want to do something good with it. Everything's impersonal. This universe, the laws, think of the laws. Gravity is impersonal, and yet the law of gravity becomes very intimate at the mystical level because it's gravitas. You know Latin? It means weight. And it means, it's my Catholic background coming through. We all had to study Latin, and oh, am I glad. But it means weight. And every choice we make, every thought we have, how we empower that thought. Like here, I have a thought. Here's my mirror. Should I throw it left or right? What do you care? Because you have nothing to do with that thought. It doesn't even exist in your head. I put it there, but you're going to dismiss it because you're not giving it any weight. Because it doesn't make any, it's not comprehending. You are not personalizing it. If I said, I have this mirror here, you wouldn't believe what's written on the side. If you only knew. Now I'm seducing you. Now I'm getting a part of you to attach to this mirror. I'm casting a spell. Okay? But as long as I said, I don't know what to do with this mirror. Should I throw it left or right? What the hell do you care? You don't care. I can throw it anywhere. That's what detachment feels like, Neil. And attachment is when you suddenly think, maybe I could use that. Maybe it could be useful. What are you actually looking at? You're looking at its power content. Does that have any power for me? I said, you wouldn't believe this, but this has the secret of your life in this magic mirror. It's not just any mirror. You'd go, that's bullshit. Until you thought about that. Well, what if it's real? She's not crazy. All of a sudden, I've got part of your psychic field traveling from Ireland, grabbing onto this mirror that's right there on my desk. And just keep thinking about it. That's what attachment is. What you've done in the language of Latin is, in the law is you've given weight to something. I used to do medical intuitive readings for decades. What I finally realized I was doing was I was tracking where you gave gravity to things. Where a person gives gravity, they give weight to things. Because how many people pass this mirror and don't look at it twice? They haven't given any weight to it. But for me, my mom bought me that as a gift when I was young. She's passed away, so it's become even more precious. So it has a lot of positive emotional weight for me. It has nothing. People walk by. Think of all the things you walk by and you don't attach to. It doesn't even occur to you to attach to every leaf and every tree and every plant and every person and everything. But then someone says something to you like, I don't know, I don't think so. And all of a sudden you give weight to their opinion of you, opinion of this, your self-esteem. And when I do a reading, that's what I look at, is where you've anchored yourself. And the more you have weight, W-E-I-G-H-T, the more you've given yourself away to all these, what Buddha would call illusions, or better yet in Taoism, spectacles, the longer you have to W-A-I-T for healing, for coincidences, for synchronicity, because all of your energy is going out to all these emotional psychic anchors that you think somehow are important, and they're no more important to you than this mirror you'll never see again.
Wow. Wow. So is it almost like the more conscious you become, the more agency you have to choose what you give weight to, and
Yes.
you free yourself from all of these attachments.
And it's not, here's something that is essential to that statement. It's, what does the universe care about? Do they actually care whether I have this mirror or not? No. What the universe watches is my intention, what I do with it, what creates hell or heaven here on earth. Are not actually all the choices we make, but our intention that energetically finances our choices, because it's the intention that has the poison or the grace. Which is why, think about this. Think about how often, when people are in a difficult place with someone, and they'll say, "Well, I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to hurt you. So why don't you just forgive me?" But somehow you just think, I don't believe you. Because regardless of you saying that, your intention was to do whatever you wanted, and you did know that it would hurt. And you rode through that intention and you made the choice anyway. It was the intention that you can't forgive, not the act. The act is what Buddha would call an illusion, but it was the intention. I knew it would hurt you, and I didn't care, and I did it otherwise. And Buddha, really, in Christian speak, in Catholic theology, that qualifies as a sin. Now, why would that? Because we are designed to receive guidance. And the kind of guidance we get is not gambling guidance or who's going to win the Super Bowl or any of that nonsense. It's always guidance about how we use our life force. How do we use this? Because this precious gift of life is God. It's holy, it's sacred. So that every single choice we make is monitored and watched and evaluated. When you die, you're going to see every choice you made and how it affected everybody. And you're going to feel it. You're going to be on the receiving end of it. And so with the universe, when we pray, like, I'll always say to God, download me with some badass grace, because I need it, because I'm about to say something I don't want to say. I cling to that because I know how powerful it is. I know that my intention is what matters. So even if I see somebody and I don't have $20 to give them on the street that day, I'll give them $20 worth of prayers. My intention, I want to help you. It's the best I got right now. It's your intention that empowers everything. Not the choice. That's why what people can't forgive, because they have to actually go up and say to someone, listen, I know I said I didn't mean that, but you know better. And so we have to have a soul to soul talk. I did get a sense that what I was about to do would hurt your feelings. And that's what you know. You know it because that's how you work. And I ignored it. I ignored the guidance and decided to go through anyway, knowing consciously it would hurt you. And an apology is not good enough. I need to say to you, I need to confess, I sinned against you. I chose to use my power and I knew it would hurt you. And that's when you get to forgiveness.
That's something I'll be thinking about for weeks. You said intention energetically finances our choices,
Yes.
which there's a lot in there.
Yeah. There's only everything in there. That's everything. You are going to live in that knowledge now. You are going to live there for the rest of your life because it hit the chord. My God, that makes sense. That's the sacred fabric. And that's why what we're looking at is a world where people don't want their conscience turned on, not consciousness, their conscience. They don't want to have a sense. They don't want to hear that guidance that what they're doing, and they're stealing and grifting and bullying countries and raping little girls and all the horror that they're doing. Because for them, this is like, there's no law that can contain me. They're high on demonic air.
I think we've probably only time for maybe one or two more questions, Caroline. I was curious to ask about your thoughts and your perspective on guides and what role guides have played in your life.
Oh, Neil.
Anything you'd like to share here?
Oh my God, Neil. Guides have, from the time, and that this book is on my relationship with the non-physical world. And when I was a child, I actually saw my guide once at the foot of my bed, but it seemed so normal. Everything was normal. And my guide said, "Come on, I have to ask you something tonight." And I sat up, and on my bed, suddenly, were all these little gifts. There was beauty, power, fame. He says, "You get one this lifetime, pick one." And I said, "If I choose wealth, you can make me poor. I know you." And I said, "And if I choose beauty, you can make me ugly. And if I choose fame, you can make me unfamous." I said, "I know you." And he's laughing. And I said, "I want this one." And he said, "Why do you want that one?" I said, "Because I eat it and you can't get it." And it was wisdom. And he said, "Well done." And then I would have episodes because, like if you read the scripture, every time angels were sent as messengers, it was because it was a life and death or a serious situation. Joseph had a dream: wake up, get Mary out of here. They do for you what you cannot do for yourself. So one day, when I was working my way through college, I worked at a candy factory. And I was driving home from work. It's a little after midnight. And all of a sudden, I heard my guide. And he said, "Slow down. A red truck's going to run that stop sign." And I slowed down, and this red truck, it would have killed me, sped through because it was 12:30 at night. And he thought there was no one on the street, and he would have killed me. And that's when I realized I was told to slow down. And all the way home, and for a long time after, I was giggling inside saying, "Jesus, you even know when I leave work." I couldn't get over it. I couldn't get over the holy intimacy of that. And the way I describe it in my book is that in these micro, tiny experiences, when an angel speaks to you like that, so directly, it says what happens is they suspend your senses from the life you're living. It's a micro experience. It's tiny, but more powerful than anything you've ever had in life. And you're suspended where you are completely detached from your life. So you hear the message and then you reattach. And then, and at one time I was house sitting for someone over Christmas. And as soon as I got in the house, I thought the house was extraordinarily charming. It was so beautiful. It was a Victorian, just my style, lots of history books. And I started to get sick. Not little sick, but big sick. Big, weak, fever, this. Couldn't go to work the next day, couldn't go to work the next day. And then this was 1975. And I got a call from this friend that I was working with. She said, "You got to get in here. They think you've gone AWOL." So I dragged myself, get in a shower, dress, get in my car, start driving. And the moment I was out of the house, I felt better. I thought, well, that's what I needed. I needed a shower, get work, go to work. Everything's fine. I walked back in. I go, what the heck? That night, I go to bed and I hear my angel, get out now. I shut up, grabbed all my clothes, flew down the stairs. And you know how these Victorians are, you walk in and there's a staircase that goes straight up. And I realized as I was at the bottom of the stairs that I'd left something in the bedroom. I turned around and I looked. I didn't see a thing, not a thing. But I felt if I go up there, I'm going to get pushed down these stairs. And I felt my angel grab my collar and say, now, and yanked me. And I was up. I drove to my parents' house. By the time I got there, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So I was in the, but I also knew these experiences always come with a download. Pray for protection. You need that kind of grace. There's a lot of darkness in this world. The learning that comes, they're like little computer programs that get dropped into you that just keep teaching you for the rest of your life. Eventually, my guidance changed to more through dreams and things like that. But the direct guidance I have received, where I actually heard my guide, aside from the experience on the bed with the gifts, has always been because my life was somehow or other threatened in ways I was unable to see. One time, this is a long story, but I'll make it real short. I lived in New Hampshire for 10 years. During that time, I became very ill with mononucleosis, very, very big, huge, not little, big, huge. And a friend of mine had gotten involved with a Filipino healer, brought that Filipino healer to New Hampshire and said, you have to come see him. He's going to make you feel better. He's the most remarkable person. I thought, I'm going any. Finally, I was so desperate. I called her up and I said, Sally, come get me. I can't even drive. So she's driving me to Peterborough where he was stashed out in a house. And she's saying, oh, he's so incredible. Where do you see what he does? This whole time, Neil, I've got my head on this window of the car door because I was too weak to, So I walk in and they had set up a room for him in this house, like a back room. And I could see all these people coming and going, and they're walking out with these big smiles, and I go in to see him. And I'm sitting down. He says, sit here. So I'm sitting like this, like knee to knee. And he says, what can I do for you? And I said, look, just jumpstart me. I am just very sick and very weak, and I need help. And he leans back and he looks up. He looks at me. And he looks up and he says, I can't help you. I said, what? So I walk out of there. And all the way home, my friend Sally, I don't understand. He helps everybody. I don't understand this. So I get home. It didn't occur to me to remember one of the great teachings from my beloved nun, Barbara. Rejection is protection. Never forget that. So I'm feeling sorry for myself and all this. A few weeks later, Sally says, can I ask you why you didn't help my friend? He said, who is she? My friend. He said, her angel came and stood between us and said, don't you touch her. He was later driven out of New Hampshire to Canada because he was molesting women. Now, I didn't see any of that. But that whole time, boy, my little angel just came in and said, don't you touch her.
No, I'm just saying I've had conversations with quite high profile people in the past few months and years, and a lot of them have shared with me that a lot of the things that they've been able to do in the world have been as a result of kind of listening to these guides and following this guidance, and these are people that are making a big impact in the world. And you think of like Socrates, for example, he spent his whole life in dialogue with his daimon, and it's like, this is something we really need to take seriously. Caroline, I could talk to you for hours, but I'm conscious of time. That is the hour up. before you go, I want to just, because Tammy Simon, our mutual friend, put us in touch here, and you've co-created a course with them. Where can people find that online? It's the way of.
It's Myss.com, MYSS.com, Myss.com. All my courses are on there.
Brilliant. And I've been listening to your audiobook on the archetypes in preparation for this, which is just incredible, by the way. So I'd really recommend people to go to that as a resource too. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. And I must say, I envy you being in Ireland. I do. I went to Dingle. I went all over Ireland, but I met my spiritual director in Ireland at a conference in Dingle. So there's all kinds of reasons I love Ireland. Who does not love Ireland? I don't trust anyone who doesn't love Ireland. No, I mean it. It's just such a heart-centered place. Yeah.
It really is.
Anyway, what a pleasure to meet you.
My pleasure. If you enjoyed this episode, you might also enjoy getting our 7 Insights newsletter. This is a once per month email where I share 7 of the most valuable insights I've uncovered in the previous 30 days. It includes book, podcast, and documentary recommendations, as well as questions and quotes specifically curated to help you live a more creative, intentional, and meaningful life. It currently goes out to over 50,000 subscribers each month. And if you're interested in joining them, you can sign up via the link in the description.